طيب بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Inshallah, today we will continue with the Hadith of Jibreel. And last week we started the Iman bil Yawm al-Akhir, the belief in the final day or the last day. And we said this comprises of basically the Qiyamat Sughra, the minor resurrection. And with that the scholars usually add Alamat al-Sa'a al-Sughra wal-Kubra, the major and minor signs leading up to the Day of Judgment. And then section 2 would be the actual Day of Judgment, Yawm al-Qiyamah itself. And then section 3 would be al-Iman bil Jannati wal Nar, like believing in the paradise and the hellfire. So last week we covered the Qiyamat Sughra, which is what? Minor resurrection, which is al-Maut and Barzakh, right? And in between, we talked about that. And today inshallah we'll start the minor signs or the signs of the Day of Judgment. And it's appropriate because both basically happen before the Day of Judgment. So of course if a person dies before the Day of Judgment, his Qiyamah has started. And if you're living, you will witness these signs leading up to Yawm al-Qiyamah. There's many ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks or discusses and tells us about the Sa'ah that's going to come. And some say the appointed time, which is the hour, the Day of Judgment itself. And also some say ashratuha, which is the signs leading up to that Day of Judgment, right? فَإِنَّ أَجَلَ اللَّهِ لَآتٍ وَهُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. The time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has determined will come about, and He is the all-hearing, the all-knower. إِنَّ السَّاعَةَ آتِيَةٌ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهَا. That the hour is coming, there is no doubt in it. Also, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in his hadith that part of our iman is believing in the day after Yawm al-Qiyamah and al-Imanu bil Yawm al-Akhir. And also he talks later on after Ihsan, when Jibreel was asking him, what are the signs of the Day of Judgment, right? And he mentioned some of the signs leading up to the Day of Judgment. The hour, the Sa'ah, we don't know exactly when it's going to be, but we know that it's close. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر, that the hour is close and the moon has been split, right? So Allah is telling us from over 1400 years ago that the hour is close. The time of Day of Judgment is getting close. أَتَى أَمْرُ اللَّهِ فَلَا تَسْتَعْجِلُوا. The hour or the event has come, so do not seek to hurry it up, basically to hasten it. اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. People's account or reckoning has come close, but they are in heedlessness. They are in neglect, basically. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that أَنَا بُعِثْتُ وَالسَّاعَةَ كَهَاتَيْنِ, that I was sent with the hour like these two. And he put his middle finger and his index finger together. So some scholars say that they are so close, like the distance between the two fingers. And other scholars say that, if one finger is taller than the other, basically this is human history and this is what's left of human history, right? So those are two interpretations of that, but both meaning that it's close relatively speaking. We don't know how many millions or billions of years this earth has existed, how many hundreds of thousands of years humanity has existed, so relatively speaking, it could be any time, it's close during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Another important aspect of al-Iman bi ashrat as-sa'a was sa'a itself, that nobody knows the appointed time exactly, right? When it comes, يسألونك عن الساعة أيان مرساها قل إنما علمها عند ربي. They ask you when the appointed hour will come. Say verily, this knowledge is only with my Lord, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يسألك الناس عن الساعة قل إنما علمها عند الله وما يدريك لعل الساعة تكون قريبا. They ask you when is the hour, the Day of Judgment coming, and say the knowledge is only with Allah. What do you know? Perhaps the hour is getting close or will be close. Why do you think that the knowledge of when the hour is concealed from us? Why don't we know it? Why is it from something of the unseen for us? Yes? So it's to be a test for us? Yes. Because if everybody knew the time, then they could wait close to that time and then start being good Muslims. Same thing we said about death last week, right? If you knew when you're going to die. And the other thing is that it won't really be a test if everybody knows that there's something coming, right? So it's concealed from us to inspire us to do good and to prepare for it before it's too late, without having that knowledge of when it is exactly. And also, from human nature, if you know everything, life becomes kind of boring, right? If you knew exactly when you're going to die, how much time you have exactly, it could be boring, and also it could cause a lot of anxiety or depression or problems. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His hikmah, He's kept it from the unseen for us. Also, it's not permissible for the Muslims to try to find out when the hour is. This is something, like we said, it's from ilm al-ghayb. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows it. وَلَا يَعْلَمُ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Nobody knows it except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to try to delve into it and find out exactly, it's not from the ways that we are taught from our Prophet ﷺ. There are some scholars who are good scholars who try to interpret certain hadith to give like a rough estimate of when the time of Qiyamah is going to happen, or when the hours, the signs are going to happen, etc. But this is not the correct way. This is something that the fortune tellers and soothsayers, they do it, which is haram for us to go to them, right? So delving into this is not from the ways of the Prophet ﷺ. He has given us certain signs to prepare us for that time to come, but we don't know exactly when it's going to come. The other point, like how short it's going to be, the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in a hadith of our ummah compared to the previous ummah, is like a worker. When he's worked from the person hired the person to do a job and give him the wages from Fajr until Maghrib, right? And the first worker came, he worked until Dhuhr, and he said, Khalas, just give me my wages for the hours I did, and he left. But if he'd keep going, he would get the whole day's wages, right? And then the second worker came, he worked from Dhuhr until Asr, and then he got tired, he gave up, he left. He just gave me my wages for the hours I did. And then the third worker came, and he worked from Asr until Maghrib, and he got the whole day's wages, right? Because of that. So the Prophet said that's like our ummah and the previous ummah, meaning the Christians and the Jews that came before us. So some scholars actually took the hadith and they calculated the time that the Jews were in the earth and the time the Christians were in the earth, and how much time that would mean for the Muslims to be left. But again, this is not something that is literal, that we can actually derive the date from it, but you'll find some books or some statements like this to that effect. And like I said, we don't try to delve into the when exactly. The ashrat, فَلْيَنْظُرُونَ إِلَّا السَّاعَةَ أَنْ تَأْتِيَهُمْ بَغْتَةً فَقَدْ جَاءَ أَشْرَاطُهَا. Like, do they not wait for the hour that it comes upon them suddenly? But some of their signs have already came. Ashrat, they're like signposts, basically like indicators for us of things that are happening as leading away to the Yawm al-Qiyamah itself. When we see these signs, we know that the Qiyamah is coming sooner, right? Sooner or later, but there's certain signs that means that it's much sooner than others. Some of the benefits of studying for like these signs, basically. Can anybody give me some benefits? What's some benefits to study the signs of the Day of Judgment? Yes. Increases your iman. How? So it increases your iman by seeing some of the signs that have already happened, that Prophet ﷺ had told us about, and it was not occurring in his lifetime, it occurred after that. So that means that, subhanAllah, our Prophet is Sadiqul Ameen, the truthful speaker, right? And it can increase our iman that, like, our Prophet has already told us that these things are happening, to see it in front of us happening before our eyes. It's a miracle. So that increases our iman. What's another benefit? Yes. Yes, it encourages one to do more good before it's too late, right? Especially if you see signs happening, you're like, okay, maybe it's getting, the hour is coming closer, I should be a better Muslim, I should do more before it's too late. What else? Anybody? It confirms the prophecy of the Prophet ﷺ and his truthfulness, like we said, yes. The other thing is that it's human nature to want to kind of know about things that are going to happen, right? So it's from the human nature to want to like know about things to come, right? That's why people are always curious. They're always looking for like, non-Muslims, especially going to like fortune tellers or looking at the zodiac signs or looking at like different things, because human nature is curiosity. So learning about some of the signs to come to us kind of helps to fulfill this curiosity for us in a halal manner, right? Also, it helps us to prepare, right? So if we know that certain signs are going to happen, it gives us more of a chance to prepare for them, right? If you know something is coming, it's easier to deal with when it comes as opposed to having no knowledge of it whatsoever, right? Just like, if you're diagnosed with something and you know what about it, you could be able to prepare for it or fight it, or, do what you have to do to take the proper medications, etc. Or you have an exam coming, you know about it, you can prepare for it properly. Same thing with the signs of Yawm al-Qiyamah, right? The more we know about it, the better we can prepare for it or how to deal with it if it comes into our lives. Like in terms of categorizing the signs, there's different methods. Some scholars categorize the signs in signs that are like continuous, things that are going to be happening on a continuous nature, or signs that are like one-off. They have happened, they're going to happen, and it's just a one-time thing, right? So those are two things. Other scholars classify it into minor signs and major signs, right? And signs that happened, and signs that are happening, and signs that will happen, right? So these are the different categories you'll find in the terms of the hour. The Prophet ﷺ, we'll just give some narrations and examples of these. He said that you count 6 things before the hour: my death, the conquest of Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, the widespread death which will come, upon the sheep. Some say this is the plague that's going to come, and the abundance of wealth, that even if a man is given 100 dinars or like $1,000, more than that probably, he won't care. It's like nothing to him. He'll still be angry. It's not going to satisfy him because wealth is so prevalent, money is so prevalent. And the fitna that will not leave any house of the Arab. And there will be a truce between you and Bani Asfar. Bani Asfar is like the children of the blonde people, meaning the Romans, the Westerners in general, right? Which they will break, and they will come to you with 80 banners, 80 flags. Under each of them will be 12,000 troops. These are some signs the Prophet said specifically that will happen before before the hour has come. So the specific events. Another one, which is like showing continuity or something that can occur more, for a period of time. He said that among the signs of the hour will be that obscenity and obscene actions and the severing of family ties will be increased, right? So people speaking foul language, this is something that's continuous. It's happening throughout the generations. Cursing, being obscene, adultery, fornication, pornography, all these things are widespread. Cutting the family ties. He said the trustworthy will become accused of dishonesty. The good people will be accused of being liars. And the liars will be called trustworthy. SubhanAllah, we're seeing it like before our eyes. So these are 2 examples of the different categories. One that's specific events happening, and then others that's like continuous events happening, And we'll get into more details, inshallah, about the different signs that have occurred or that are occurring and will occur, inshallah. So from the first major signs is that the coming of the Prophet ﷺ himself, right? His messengership, himself being born, his messengership, and his death are all signs that the judgment day is near. The Prophet ﷺ said that, like we said, I and this hour have been sent like these 2, right? Meaning that they are very close to one another. So his passing away is actually a sign for us that the Qiyamah is getting closer. Another one is that the splitting of the moon. Yes. Yes. Also, the Prophet ﷺ predicted, these are signs, like I'm trying to cover in order a little bit of what happened. He predicted the death of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, right? In another narration, Ali. Once when they were upon the Jabal Uhud, and the Jabal Uhud was shaking, and he said, "Innama alayka siddiqun wa shahidain," right? 2, that upon you is a truthful one and 2 martyrs, right? And we know that Abu Bakr is a Siddiq, and subhanAllah, Umar and Uthman, they were killed as shaheed, right? For the sake of Islam. Also, the Prophet ﷺ predicted, and these things, events that happened already, was the battle of Al-Jamal, which is the dispute that happened between Aisha radiallahu anha and Ali radiallahu anhu. He actually said to them, they were sitting in their household together, subhanAllah, and he said, what will become of you when you 2 are fighting one another? And Ali said, how could I fight the mother of the believer, or fight with the mother of the believer, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said that, it's okay, it will happen. But when it does, make sure you take her home safely, right? And subhanAllah, and then Aisha, and the Prophet told her that you will hear the dogs barking at you and you will be on the wrong. Subhanallah. And exactly what happened. This dispute, and the other one I'm going to talk about, was a very sad time, for the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum. One of the biggest fitnas that happened, because there are people that were giving the glad tidings of paradise, right? They both had the same goal, and the Prophet mentioned this in another hadith, that they both had the same goal together, but they disputed, subhanAllah, right? What happened was there was a group of innovators and evildoers that tried to cause fitna amongst the Muslims, and they killed Uthman. The state was in chaos. Ali, radiallahu anhu, he wanted to stop the chaos, have stability, find out what's going on exactly, and then go after the killers. Aisha and Muawiyah, they were upset, and they wanted to get the killers immediately to take care of it, for revenge for their family member, basically. So unfortunately the events turned out, and the hadith happened just like the Prophet said, and at the end, Ali, he had his own daughters and his women take the guard of Aisha and take her back safely, and Aisha heard the dogs barking, and she realized she was in a mistake, and she felt so bad, right? And then also the Prophet, he predicted about the battle between Muawiyah and Ali radiallahu anhu. And this is one time when he was praying, subhanallah, and Hassan, he came and he fell down and he was crying, and the Prophet came down and picked him up, because the heart of a father, or grandfather at the time, was very tough with the child. Like, you don't want the child to be feeling pain or anything, so to comfort him. And then he said to the people, "Inna ibni hadha siyuslah bayna ta'ifatain," right? That my son, meaning his grandson Hassan, he will make peace between two parties of the Muslims. And after Ali radiallahu anhu was assassinated, he was the Khalifa, but he relinquished it for the sake of Muslim unity, so Muawiyah became the Khalifa after that. This also was something predicted by the Prophet ﷺ.
Ali and Aisha had that conversation in front of the Prophet?
Yes.
Well, I never did.
Yeah. So it was, subhanAllah, even like, imagine they heard it from his mouth and they denied that they would ever have, something like that, and then it actually happened. So this shows the way that the Prophet ﷺ, inspired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, one of the signs that happened was the fire in the Hijaz. This is something the Prophet ﷺ also predicted. He said, the hour will not come until a fire comes out of the land of Hijaz, and it will illuminate the necks of the camels in Basra. Like, it would be basically a great fire that's so much widespread that the light of it would reach far off in the distance.
This happened?
Yes, this happened. I mean, there's a dispute amongst the scholars, but the majority of them say this one has happened. It's not the one that's going to come, on the Day of Judgment. That's something different. But this is a fire that happened in the Hijaz, particularly. The boasting. These are signs, I guess you could say, that are ongoing. Inshallah, I've written a couple of my own outside as the book as well. But the boasting and competing with one another in building masajid. The Prophet ﷺ said the hour will not come until people compete in building masajid and boasting about that. And subhanAllah, this is a good deed, but we see the building of masjid is something that's good, but unfortunately it became a competition for some people and more of a status thing, as opposed to being for the sake of Allah only, but they use it to brag, I built such and such. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that, you will follow, the hour will not come until my ummah imitates the ways of the previous nations, following them, hand by hand or foot by foot. Even if they were to do something, despicable, the Muslims would do that. And they asked, who is this? Is it the Christians and the Jews? And he said, who else? Of course, right? So we see this happen as well. The following of the ways of the disbelievers. The Prophet ﷺ also said from the signs is that the evil people will be dominant, and the good people will be like scorned. One of the signs is that the hour is that evil people will be held in high esteem, and the good people will be looked down upon. Subhanallah. So evildoers, doing fahsha, adultery, fornication, you know, you name it. They're considered some of the most popular people to watch, you know, on these stations, these actresses, these actors, these singers, all this, you know, popular culture, right? But righteous people are looked down upon. You're backwards, you're, you know, what do you call it, like extremist, you're this, you're that, right? So subhanAllah, we're witnessing it in our lifetime. People will be pointed to positions of power or authority that do not deserve to be. Yes?
You said evil people would be like in the majority and like righteous people would
Well, evil people will be held in high esteem and righteous people will be looked down upon. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that, you know, when the hour will come, the man asked the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, when the trust is lost, expect the hour. And he said, how will the trust be lost? The companions asked the Prophet ﷺ. He said that when the authority is given to those who are not qualified for it, right? When the leadership positions or people like taking authority, you're not qualified to that position. He said, "Antadhar as-sa'a," wait for the hour to come. Another narration, he says, the sign is that markets will become very close to one another. And what do you guys think when I say that right now? Something that comes, malls and outlets, right? SubhanAllah. Like literally every single thing you want, shopping in there, even the cars now are in the malls. Like to buy a car, clothing, food, everything is like, markets have become so close together. Commerce will be so widespread that a woman will have to help her husband in trade. And subhanAllah, nowadays almost like most families, they cannot afford to live on one income, so you find the husband and the wife both working. He said also, the Prophet ﷺ, riba, interest, usury, will be widespread. In another narration, nobody will escape the dust of riba, the dust of interest. We see this as well. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that lying will be increased, right? And there will be a great deal of haraj, which is like bloodshed or killing. So much so that the killer won't know why he's killing, and the killed won't know why they're being killed. You know, look at all these mass shootings we had. This is a modern, you know, thing. This hasn't been recorded in past history of people just going to shoot up others for no reason whatsoever. Like it's something that's, you know, crazy. It's happening in our lifetimes. Another thing is that women will be more than men, and it will come to a point that it will be like 50 women to 1 man. It hasn't reached that level yet, but it's getting there in terms of statistics. There's more women than there are men, subhanAllah, already. The prevalence of foul talk, like, you know, profanities, obscenities, rudeness. The Prophet ﷺ said that from the signs of the hours that people will become rude and foul-mouthed, and the ties of kinship will be cut, and the treacherous will be trusted. So we see this as well, subhanAllah, like the proliferation of profanity, right? Everywhere you go, like people cuss. Even people cuss in front of their parents now. It's not a big deal. Their parents cuss their kids cuss their parents. Like it's become so widespread, it's almost normal, right? Every single movie, shows, songs, sometimes there's profanity. It's so widespread. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that there will be an increase in adultery or fornication, zina, right? This thing as well, you know, this is also a modern thing that's happened. We don't see, you know, subhanAllah, even up to maybe 200 years ago, it was, or 150, this was something that was like way out of the ordinary. You know, most women, like it was very rare that it would be, you know, having relationships out of marriage around the world, right? It was considered a very bad person that did such and such. But now it's so common, right? There's, you know, it's normal for a person to be in relationships, about, you know, many relationships without ever getting married. Having children out of wedlock, that's normal now. People sleeping around with many partners, that's normal now. Pornography is everywhere, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said that, you know, it'll be so widespread that even the shy person will be like, can you just, you know, can you do it like somewhere else? Like they're doing it in the middle of the street or on a bench and something like that. And like a person has some haya, at least he's, you know, he can't stop them, but he's like, can you just, you know, take it somewhere else? That's how bad it's going to get. And that's how it's become, subhanAllah. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that from the signs is there will be an increase in drinking the alcohol, right? And we see now there's a proliferation in alcoholism and drug use. You know how many people, one of the greatest causes of death is drug abuse right now, right? Fentanyl and these other things. Also from the signs is there will be ill treatment of the neighbors. You know, people will not be kind to the neighbors. And subhanAllah, like how many of you know your actual neighbors? You know, as Muslims, some of us, alhamdulillah, we try at least to know. But in general, like you can live in a whole apartment building, live next to like hundreds of people, and nobody knows who their own neighbors are in an apartment building, for example. Let alone, you know, in the neighborhoods. You know, they've lived in houses next to each other for years and years. They don't even know their first names or who they are. You know, alhamdulillah, I'm blessed to like live in the same neighborhood I grew up in, basically. So I know like mostly the neighbors. It's a very rarity right nowadays. But in general, you know, it's one of the signs, because in the past, one of the great things you can do is be kind to the neighbor, look after the neighbor, inquire about the neighbor. You know, if they need something, if you can help, if they look after you, if you're gone, etc. Right? Nowadays, it's like nafsi, nafsi. Everybody doesn't care about anybody else. Also along these lines is that the salam al-khas, right? Only giving salam to the ones that you know. You know, this is also from the signs of the hour. Severing the ties of kinship, you know, cutting off the relations from family members. You know, family members not speaking with each other. There's one narration, I couldn't find the exact authenticity of it, but it's apparently saying that يواصلون الأطباق ويقطعون الأرحام, that they will, you know, keep the plates connected, but they will cut the family ties, right? And in the past they thought this means like there will be an increase in eating, you know, having lots of food, etc., and then forgetting about the family, going to parties with friends and everything, and then forgetting about the family. And I've heard a modern interpretation too, that it could be like these, you know, satellite dishes that are, you know, TV and internet and cell phones and stuff like that. People can be so addicted to these things and they cut off their family. They could be in the same house with their family, not even speak to their family, but they're on the phone 24/7, right? One of the signs also is that the believer's dreams will come true. You know, the true believers, they'll start seeing vivid dreams that will actually come true. This is also a sign that the hour is coming near. Also, the time will pass quickly. And subhanAllah, all these things we are seeing, you know. There will be an increase in natural calamities, earthquakes, floods, etc. This also we are witnessing. The Prophet ﷺ, he said also that لا يقوم الساعة إلا والروم هم أكثر الناس, that the hour will not come except that the Romans will be the dominant peoples, right? The dominant force, the dominant power. This thing it's why it's special is because at that time Europe was in like the dark ages, right? They were in a very big decline. So to say that they will be the dominant ones was something like, you know, also prophetic from the Prophet ﷺ, obviously. Writing and literacy will increase, but knowledge will decrease. Yes.
Wait, so wouldn't it be the dominant ones, so the Muslims will never be dominant?
No, it doesn't say that. It just said that they will have dominancy at one point. Yeah. Also, like the increase of literacy, reading and writing, which was something not known at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And now look, everybody can read and write, but how many people are knowledgeable, right? And the decrease of knowledge, especially religious knowledge, right? At the time, many scholars were huffaz, they memorized books and books and books, right? And now we don't have that anymore. We have people that can read and write. Sometimes because when you don't have to depend upon your memory and you always have to write things down, you start not relying so much in building that knowledge as opposed to the previous scholars who relied mostly on the memory, right? And writing was like a secondary thing. So subhanAllah, everybody, you know, this prevalence of writing and literacy is something also that wasn't, you know, wasn't very rare for non-elites to be literate, to read. Now even the most poor of people can read, you know, which is a good thing too, but it's just one of the signs the Prophet ﷺ told us about that he could not have known about at his time. Another thing which is very interesting, because they were very unknown at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, was the rise of the Turks. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, دعوا الحبشة ما دعوكم واتركوا التراك ما تركوكم. He said, leave the Ethiopians, Habasha, as long as they leave you alone, and leave the Turks as long as they leave you alone, right? So there's an indication that there are going to be some type of power in the future. Another narration, he said that you will fight a group of people that their eyes are like, squinted and their faces are flat. Meaning, most scholars refer to because the original Turks, they come from like the Mongols, Genghis Khan, right, in the mountains and these things. So they had these exact features, subhanAllah. The Prophet was pretty. And like I said, at that time they were unknown. They were not even on the map. So only Allah can have inspired the Prophet to know these things. Also related to them, the Prophet predicted the conquering of Constantinople, right? Constantinople. This is something that the Sahaba started inspiring to, because they heard this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And he actually was asked, who will we conquer first, the Romans or the Rome or Constantinople? And he said, Constantinople. Even though at that time, Constantinople was like the biggest and most powerful city, and Rome was like insignificant at that time. So it would have been easier to conquer Rome and then Constantinople, but the Prophet said you would conquer Constantinople first, right? This is also a sign. He said that, subhanAllah, there will be, things attached to you that will tell you what's going on in your household. Yeah. SubhanAllah. So, we see this, like, of course, these cell phones, right? Yes.
When you mentioned earlier about how under Constantinople, when they're dueling, when they're conquering and then going to the battle, they're like in the back of their minds or any type of like conversations about how like they're enacting the miners and things like that.
What's that?
Are they like reflecting or any type of like?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they're seeing that the signs are coming true. There's another narration though so it's kind of indicating that it might be conquered twice, because another narration is that it will be opened with the takbir and tahmid and tasbih, right? Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah, Subhanallah, Allahu Akbar. This will open Constantinople. So some scholars say that it might get reconquered, and then we have to, the Muslims have to conquer it again. Wallahu a'lam. The emergence of imposters, like false prophets, Dajjals, right? The Prophet said that there will be 30 liars. Each will be claiming to be the messenger of Allah. We've seen more than that actually, but the main ones are counted as 30 by certain scholars. And that's the minor ones, because the real Dajjal is going to come afterwards, obviously. The fitna between, like we said, the Sahaba that happened, and between the Muslims in general. And one thing I forgot to mention just in dealing with that is that it shows that even no matter how great they were, how a Muslim can be, they're still human beings. They still make mistakes. They still can fight with one another. But they were doing it for the sake of Allah. They both thought that they were correct, and they fought for their opinion. And even, subhanAllah, they told each other, they said that we'd fought, the Romans, we fought the Byzantine, we fought the Iranian, the Persians, we fought this and this. None of them were harder than fighting each other. And subhanAllah, when the time of Salat came, they would actually stop and pray with one another, according to some narrations. Right? So it wasn't for the dunya, it was, for something else, and it was a fitna that the shaitan, encouraged. But the scholars, they say that at times of fitna, the Prophet ﷺ, he told us, because the companions asked about what happens if this is going to happen, what should we do? Most of the advice he gave is to refrain. If there's a battle or there's fighting between the Muslims, to abstain is always on the safe. He said, if you have camels, attend to your camels. If you have sheep, attend to your sheep. If you have land, attend to your land. If you have a sword, put it in its sheath and stay in your house. Right? Try to stay away from the fitna. And if they come to you, say that I do not stretch my hand. Be like the son of Adam who said, I'm not going to put my hand out to kill you if you want to kill me. Right? So any times of fitna like that, it's best for the Muslims to abstain, especially if there's Muslim fighting Muslims. There's another narration that says that the non-Muslim nations will gather together to attack the Muslims, just like the people are gathered together upon a plate, right, to eat the plate. SubhanAllah. And it was asked, will we be, because of our limited number? He said, no, you will be many in number, but you will be like the foam on the sea, right? Why? Because they said you left the jihad, right? And you left you got attached to the dunya, chasing the farming and the land and the cows and commerce, and you forgot about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You forgot about your duties, and so you became worthless until you go back. حَتَّى تَرْجَعُوا إِلَى دِينِكُمْ. Yes. These are all minor signs, yes. Signs that have happened, basically, or are happening. SubhanAllah, it says the police will whip the people. There will become a time when the men with whips, like the tails of cattle, they will go out and basically like beat the people, in their wrath, unjust police people. Women being clothed improperly, basically that like as if they are not wearing clothing. This is something that is happening as we speak. Trade or business would be like widespread, and it would consume the ummah basically. The abundance of wealth, like we said, also wealth would be, subhanAllah, now they're talking about this new era that's going to come, Allahu Alam, that people won't really have to work anymore because of the AI, so there's be delegated money, and I don't know what they're going to do with their lives, but it's just, becoming less and less, so Allahu Alam, that's going to lead to what we're talking about in terms of the abundance of wealth and
Did that stuff already happen?
no, I don't.
Like during when like the House of Treasury, there was like so much
There
money.
was a time during the Khilaf of Umar ibn Aziz that they said that there was no poor people to find to give zakat to, because they were implementing the Islamic zakat so well. Allahu Alam if that was the time, but most likely it hasn't come yet. The obesity will be widespread, subhanAllah. This is also something that's a modern phenomenon. Like, they didn't have this problem of obesity until modern era, right? That people will be like overweight, extremely overweight, and it's widespread. Now we find that like majority of countries has it. Even in our own Muslim countries, who were very poor in the past, century, and they got this wealth, and that obesity started coming into that, the diabetes and all these other issues, heart problems and everything like that, because of the proliferation of food and wealth. These signs have not happened yet. We're still waiting for them, and but it's starting, I think, subhanAllah, and that's the Arabian Peninsula will become green again, right? How is this also prophetic just by that statement? Anybody can? Yes.
It implies that Arabia was like, full of like greenery.
Yes. And how is that something like?
It looked like a lot of water.
So, yeah, how do we know now that the Arabian Peninsula was green before, or lush with like?
Also with like whales.
And what else? What's the big thing that they have that they're the biggest producer of in the world? Oil, right? So it shows that there was a lot of life there before. SubhanAllah, it was green, vegetation, animals, everything, right? And then it became desert, SubhanAllah, but it will go back to being green again and abundant with water. Yeah, it's coming green. Yeah, I've heard that in other parts of the Arabian Peninsula and other Gulf countries, the greenery is starting to already appear, SubhanAllah. Another one is that the new moon will like start to appear larger, and I don't know if this is me, but I'm seeing it sometimes, and it looks like it's becoming larger and larger just in my lifespan. Allahu A'lam. Also, animals and inanimate objects will speak. Allahu A'lam, like we can say that the phones and stuff already, we're like speaking, robots, AI, all these things are already speaking now, subhanAllah. Animals, Allahu A'lam. Also, I said about the fitna entering into every household. Some scholars say that's like happened already too. That could be considered. Some say the television or the access to social media or other fitna. We can't say for sure, but Allahu A'lam. Yeah. The Euphrates that we will uncover gold. The Prophet said that some gold will be discovered in the Euphrates River, and for every 100 people going there to try to get the gold, 99 will be killed. And everybody will say, maybe I'll be that one who survives, right? But you have a 99% chance of death. So if you see that, don't go there. The Muslims will be besieged in Medina. Jahaja will seize power. He's like Arabian man from Qahtan who will be like a tyrannical ruler. These haven't happened yet. And I think we'll stop here because then basically what's left is the last of the minor signs, which is what? Anybody know? What is it? No, that's the major sign. So the last of the minor sign actually transitions into the major signs, and that's the Mahdi, the coming of the Mahdi. he's pretty much the final of the minor signs. And with him, we will transition into the last major signs, inshallah. Next week, inshallah, I'll cover the Mahdi and the final 10 signs, inshallah. So we'll pause here. Those are mostly, like, I didn't cover all of them. There's still some more, subhanAllah. There's actually whole books about it. They go into great detail. But we mentioned some of them, and, inshallah, increases our iman of seeing all these signs that have happening before our eyes or that have already happened, and the truthfulness of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we'll end here, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Any questions before we... Yeah, Sheikh Yusuf. Ya Allah, subhanakallah, bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.